under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the board meeting tonight, day before Valentine's Day. Hope you brought your loved one with you and can start out Valentine's tonight. Or if you didn't bring your loved one with you, or you forgot to get someone for tomorrow, you can take something home to her. So you can see our clock's not working tonight, so that means we can go on and on and on tonight. And I got our timekeeper up here in the front, and he'll make sure that we're right on time. All right? Board members, make sure your mics are on. We have roll call tonight. Everyone is present. We have the agenda before you. Any deletions or additions? If not, then the agenda stands as presented. I don't have any comments right now, so we're down to public comment. Yes, sir.
Documentation.
Okay. Thanks, Larry.
Basically, I wanted to talk about, last meeting, Paige came in here and talked about the KALO permit filling wetlands. And, by his own admission on the permit, he's outgrown his footprint and needs more space. And one of the main reasons that on the application why he wants to move the rock crusher is noise and dust, by his own admission. So, based on these zoning ordinances here, look at that item number one. Number one, it talks about, when KALO was approved for all this, it was always, well, this is permitted, this is permitted, this is permitted. Well, the very first thing that Article 40 talks about is these zoning districts were created, so that it doesn't have an adverse impact on the community. And the very first thing in that number one is alleviate any adverse impact of the use of the area, intensity or type, unique or typical, which the uses allows. And then when you go back and read that general industrial, it says the purpose of these regulations to permit the development of industrial operations while protecting abutting rural, residential, and commercial properties from incompatible uses. I mean, if there's ever incompatible use, it's got to be it right there. And then the other thing is, I hope you consider these things before you figure what you're going to do. Either allow them to fill it or not. But one of the main things is in Article 60 is in all land uses shall conform to applicable town noise regulations. And attached behind that is the noise regulation, the noise ordinance that we have in place here in Salem. I'm 1 mile away from that operation, and it happened this morning. I sleep with my windows open in the wintertime and the summertime. 6 o'clock this morning, bang, 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 boom, bam. It's crazy. I'm 1 mile away. When that rock crusher's running during the day, I clearly hear it in my backyard. That's 1 mile away. He's in violation of all these ordinances right now. And before we allow him to expand any more over there, by his own admission, he's outgrown. I think we ought to hold him accountable. And this right here is my official complaint for him to the township stating that, and I'd like you guys to address it. That's all I got to say.
All right, thanks, Leonard. Okay, anybody else? Yes.
I thought I read in the packet that you guys are allowing $500,000 for the Hamlet deal. Is that true? Why so much money?
We'll talk about it when it gets to it. He'll explain that stuff.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay?
Will the public let you talk when you explain that
Sure.
stuff? Yes.
I always let you talk. Okay. All right, anybody else?
I have one other thing that I
Yeah.
wanted to say. You know, after Paige spoke here last week, or last meeting, you know, she told me she received a phone call, you know, from you, Gary,
I heard that today.
that, Mr. Horton over here had said that, you know, I'm a firm believer, if we're gonna fling mud, let's everybody get dirty. A veiled threat, whatever you wanna call it, either shut your mouth, or you're gonna have problems with your truck parked there. I mean, I honestly don't think that's the way that these things are handled. You know, there's, like I say, there's so many violations in this township. We've got a billboard down here on 6 Mile that's illegal, you know, for the unlimited services. You know, it's just, it is all over the place, and it's rampant. And like I say, we're gonna fling mud, let's everybody get dirty.
Okay, anybody else? Bob?
My name seemed to come up. She's not grandfathered in, even though she thinks she is. Nobody's ever complained about what she does at all. I haven't complained. I just don't think the pot should call the kettle black. That's all I can say. She's got a trucking company running out of residential property. Nobody's ever brought it up before. She goes down Chubb Road where it says no trucks, comes out on 6 Mile now, no trucks, a $500 fine. Like I said, people that live in glass houses should not throw stones.
Alright, we're gonna fling mud, let's everybody get
I'm not
dirty.
slinging no mud, I'm telling you the way it is, and you don't know. I know exactly when she moved here, the ordinance went in effect, nobody bothered her. As long as she was not getting in somebody else's face, no problem. But she's come down here too many times to complain about Kayla. And that's what I'm here for, a protective industrial.
Yeah, that Kayla was an incompatible use, it's an incompatible use.
All right. All right, anybody else?
Children.
I mean,
Okay.
if it was ever incompatible use, I can't see anything more blatant.
Okay, moving on down to the consent agenda, Mr. Wenzel.
I move that Salem Township approve the following consent agenda items. We have the minutes of last month, January 9th, regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. We have disbursements for January out of the general fund of $43,742.89. Checks 27,271 through 27,327. We have payroll of $63,185.41. Paycor $453.83. Checks out of the sewer fund of $6,433.30. Checks 2028 and 2029. We had checks out of the escrow fund of $2,795. These are checks 1741 through 1745. Now for invoices that we will be paying in February, a total of $135,096.24. And that breaks down to, out of the general fund of $107,576.93. Out of the sewer fund, $16,335.31. And escrow invoices of $11,184. Do we have a second on these?
I'll second it.
Okay, John Daniel, seconds. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Questions? Okay, if not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry to interrupt.
Hold on.
With regard to the minutes of last month, on page 3, under board discussion, the second paragraph, I think we should remove the very last part of this last sentence where it says, "and not as reimbursement," because that's not a correct statement.
Okay, we'll remove that.
Put a
So put the period after purpose?
After purpose, and remove the rest of that.
All right, thank you.
Okay. John, that's okay? On the second?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor for the amendment adjusted to the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's passed. Okay, every year, the Board of Review is coming up here in March on your taxes and everything, for school taxes and all that, so I have to read this stuff as there are a couple resolutions before the Board of Review starts, so be patient with me. This is to allow residents to protest in writing to the Board of Review in order to ease the burden on taxpayers, the assessor, and the Board of Review, and to ensure all taxpayers have an equal opportunity to be heard. The Board of Review, Salem Township, hereby resolves, according to provision of MCL 21130 of the General Property Tax Act, that the Board of Review shall receive letters of protest regarding assessments from residents, taxpayers from the first Tuesday in March until it adjourns from the public hearings for which it meets to hear such protest. All notices of the assessments charged and all advertisements of the Board of Review are to include a statement that the resident taxpayer may protest by letter to the Board of Review. The foregoing resolution was offered by me and supported by
I'll support that.
Mr. Converse, and we will take a roll call vote on that.
All right. Converse,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Wensley, yes, and Whitaker.
Yes. Okay, second resolution tonight is the Board of Review under the review property hardship guidelines. Whereas the adoption of the guidelines for property exemption is within the preview of the Salem Township Board, and whereas the homestead of persons who, in the judgment of the supervisor and the Board of Review, by reason of property hardship and are unable to contribute to the public charges, is eligible for exemption in whole or part from taxation under Public Act 390, 1994. Whereas pursuant to PA 390, 1994, Salem Township, Washtenaw County adopts the following guidelines for the supervisor and the Board of Review to implement. Now therefore, it is to be resolved that the Board of Review shall follow the above state policy and federal guidelines in granting or denying exemptions. The following resolution was offered by me and supported by
I'll support.
Reggie, DeLuca, and we need a roll call vote.
All right. Converse,
Yes.
Daniel,
Yes.
DeLuca,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Wensley, yes, and Whitaker.
Yes. All right, next on the agenda is the Metro Act right-of-way permit. Mr. Wensley.
In your board packet is the agreement, and before the meeting, we have the map of where the proposed right-of-way for this fiber optic cable, and it looks like it's going to be along M14. It's going to be running along M14, and so it basically, in our township, it's going to be going from Napier to where it crosses near Joy Road. So it's in the right-of-way of M14. Ed, have you had a chance to review, is there any changes that you know of that we might need to make?
No, this permit follows a standard form that's published by the Public Service Commission. So there's really very little we can do with this.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's no, but even reviewing that, there's no revisions I would suggest.
Okay.
I know our planner did talk to the county about it, and it seemed like it was fine there. There were no problems there, other than they needed passage by the board.
Correct. And I mean, really, the right-of-ways that they're using are either state or county right-of-ways primarily anyway, so
Okay.
it's just kind of formality at this point for us to
All right. Okay.
What's this other map that you have here that has the green lines on it?
The green is what the existing they have an existing fiber optic cable. That's what they gave us, that shows that they've got it in place already.
Exhibit A attached shows the existing utility that's running through. I don't think it's fiber optic, but it's the existing cable running through. And then Exhibit B is the proposed new fiber optic cable that they're going to be running along.
Right. Did that clear it up, Tim? All right. I move that Salem Township approve the Metro Act application form for access to and ongoing use of public right-of-way within Salem Township for the purpose of constructing a fiber optic network extension to service its customers. And do we have someone to second it?
I'll second it. Okay, John Daniel, any other questions on this?
Yeah. I guess I kind of didn't know when I was generating a lot of my questions here, where it was actually being covered and where it was not being covered. I recall going to a meeting at the MTA about this about 2 years ago up in Lansing. And they were going back, and at that point in time, I think the best I can remember, it was like adopting ordinances and stuff like that to control, because these fiber optic towers on them to get data faster and all that kind of stuff. But I was kind of went to sleep because I didn't think it was appropriate to us. And now I see it is, and I don't remember exactly what all the things that they were bringing up in there. But one of the issues that I really have with this is, sounds like construction. You know, we have Charter Communications running through our property, and we get a franchise fee from it. Why is Verizon then putting in a cable, and they're on point 9.1, I think on page 10, they offer something in there about fees. And I'm kind of wondering why, or if we should not be looking into it as their franchise fees that goes along with this? Or we expect just to roll over and say, okay, you can do whatever you want? Or, because now I see that this is on state and local property, I don't know if we have much of a say in that, but it still brings up the question as, what's going on there?
Under the Metro Act, we're allowed to charge a $500 application fee, but that's about the extent of it. The dispute that I think what you may be referring to, Dale, is that there has been an ongoing dispute as to whether the Metro Act applies to anything other than cable or fiber optics that are in the ground. In other words, if they're running lines above ground, it tends to be the municipality's interpretation that the Metro Act doesn't apply to above ground facilities or buildings. So to the extent that you're talking about above ground, the Metro Act may not apply, and this application may not apply. If you read the application for the permit, it talks about installing things as road work is done, because they're going to be on the ground. So you're correct. They're talking here basically within the state's right of way along M14.
Because I was really concerned, I didn't know whether they were going down the mile roads or where they were going. To me, it was kind of, what's the difference between whether you're going to somebody's house on a wire or you're going over the air? You know, that's like, what's the difference? So that was one of the questions I had on it. Okay, those are the questions I had.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
to Mr. Converse's point and question about the fees and what Mr. Plato mentioned, how do we ensure that the appropriate application fee is submitted with this request?
Or will that happen once we approve the contract and we deal directly with this contract firm?
I think your cover letter indicated that a $500 check was enclosed. I haven't seen that, but I assume it is.
I haven't seen it either, but we will check on that.
All I got was an email from Paul, so
Yeah.
I didn't see it either.
Yeah.
There should have been a check and close. So,
All right.
We haven't gotten that, we should.
Okay.
All right. We'll check on that $500.
Yeah, that's what
Okay, so we have a second. John Daniel, any other questions?
Can I just-
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
I want to ask, does this set a precedence for all the other wireless cable are gonna want to just bury on top of this? Or how does that work?
That's an ongoing dispute, and to what extent the Metro Act permits to do that and use the right of ways. The concern has been not so much with the underground facilities, it's the above-ground facilities. There have been some companies that have actually been putting towers closer to telephone poles along roadways, saying, we're within the right of way, so we can do this, and that's where the dispute comes, can they do that under the Metro Act or not? Because most municipalities interpret the Metro Act as only applying to underground facilities. So I don't think we're setting a precedent. I mean, we're basically bound by what the Metro Act says and the Michigan Public Control Commission has said we have to do. There are stringent fines if we don't pass or approve or deny the permit within 45 days. The Public Service Commission can actually fine the township up to $40,000 a day for not taking action on permits. So the Public Service Commission very heavily regulates this, and it's really within their jurisdiction and control.
All right, so,
Just so you're aware of that. I can't push it off till next meeting.
all right, then, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is this a resolution, supposed to be a roll call or not?
No.
No, all right.
Should it be approved upon receiving the $500 check?
Yeah, we'll get the $500. Yeah.
Can I ask, Mr. Plato said you had to take it up and do something with the application within 45 days. What if you denied it? Then they still gonna fine you?
Well, you'd have to have a reasonable basis to deny it under the act. So you'd be taking your chances.
Yeah, but but you had dealt with the application,
You had
that's
dealt
what
with
you're
the
supposed to do.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, moving on down to firefighter new hire. Jim, you want to, well, let me turn it over to Mr. Trent first. You have the motion on this, Mr. Trent.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I move that Salem Township approve the hiring of Jesse Citabaca as a Salem Township firefighter, subject to background check, and checking of his references and driving record, which is traditionally done with any firefighter hiring.
Okay, do you have a second on this?
I'll second this.
Mr. Conver seconds. Mr. Rockwell, Chief, can you give us just a little?
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Citabaca just moved into our township. He moved into Northville Crossings. He's a fully qualified EMT basic as well as firefighter 1 and 2. The good news is he moved into our community because he wanted to attend our schools. So he's got a young child, and he's looking forward to putting his kid through the school systems, local school systems. He currently is a supervisor for a company, security company that does all the GM at the proving grounds as the firefighter / security out there. The beauty of this, not only that he lives out in the park, is that he works an afternoon shift. So the times that we generally are challenged to have folks at, which would be the middle of the night, middle of the night until we get back from work, he would be available. So he works a normal shift from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then so he'd be available like at 11 p.m. to like 2 p.m. the next day. And that's because we have a lot of people that work normal shifts. This would be very complementary to helping us out meet that requirement. And as Mr. Trent alluded to, we still have some backgrounds. He's got past physical, drug tests, all that stuff. But he is a colleague or a co-worker of 3 of our firefighters that already are on this department. Brett Hoffenbauer, Jeff Goodwin, and Scott McGinnis. And I've talked to them, all three of them, and gotten recommendations. So, again, I'll follow through with the diligence, but I was hoping the board would consider this hire. It would be basically no training cost for us, and other than the fact that we have to get them up to speed on our rules and procedures. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, and I'm hoping the board will approve it.
And on another note, Mr. Supervisor, he has over 12 years of current firefighter experience under his belt, so it's somebody that has some good experience to add to our crew.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Chief or anybody? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
New firefighter. How many guys will that be on our?
I believe that's 23.
23.
I'll get you exactly.
Okay, moving on down to the grant under financials. I move that Salem Township approve the agreement for the Michigan Economic Development Corporation grant with Salem Township and to authorize the supervisor to sign the agreement on behalf of Salem Township. Have a second on that?
Support.
Mr. Trent? Sports? Most of you know about the grant from the state of Michigan to Salem Township, $10 million. The agreement has been before us, and this is for the infrastructure only for the USD, for sewer and water. This does not pay for the whole project. I think we all know it's roughly in the vicinity of $23 million. There are really, I think we've tried, I think the attorney has tried, I went with our attorney to Lansing, I think we talked about this last month, that there really are no strings attached to this. The things that I think we really want to be concerned about as a township, that once any of these projects are started, anything that is done, and let's say the development stops, or the economy gets bad, or whatever, developers decide to walk away, we will not have to take that money and give it back to the state, but if we do have money left in the bank that we haven't used for the project, we do have to give it back. That was made very clear. I don't know any other questions from the board. I know we've talked about this quite a bit last month. Ed, do you have any comments, since you've kind of had some more contact with them this past week?
Yeah, I would not be happy to answer any questions the board may have. I would point out that this afternoon I did send out a version with some very minor changes. So hopefully the version you're looking at is the most recent version. The one particular change that was made was under Section 6, the grantee duties, which would be the township's duties. It originally said that the grantee agrees to undertake, perform, and complete the services described in Exhibit B, and because that was a concern that we don't want to be agreeing to complete, putting in both water and sewer at this time, I had to take out the word complete, so that we're only agreeing to undertake and perform the services of, that we set forth in Exhibit B. We're not agreeing to complete the project at this time. And the Michigan Economic Development Corporation is aware that we may proceed to do just sewer or just water at this point, and that we're still waiting to find out how the rest of the infrastructure is going to be funded.
And I think it's important that, we I want to hear anybody's comments on this also, is that, that the engineering would be the first thing that would start, which is in roughly about $950,000, or let's say close to $1 million, just the engineer, the sewer, and the water. So again, this grant money is Salem Township's money, and I believe that would be the first thing that we would do. I think, but if we do pass this tonight, as what I feel is that as a representative of the township, that we really need to not only Showstack, but there's other developers, that property owners, they really need to figure out how they're gonna fund the rest of this before anything happens in that area. I mean, I think we've kind of said that before, but I think, you know, if they want to do one project at a time, so we know that the sewer is gonna be $13 million. So if they, you know, if there's a $10 million in the bank or whatever, and they have to come up with the other $3-4 million, then we need to see that before we start that project. Or it could be vice versa, it could be the water or whatever. But I think that we would want to make sure, I mean, we like to see it all. And then the question comes in, can they force us to do it if we start one and not the other? That's, let's say we start with the sewer, and then can they force us to bring the water in? We just want to make sure, and I think we've made it clear, this is not going to be on the taxpayers of Salem Township. It's going to be, the developer's going to pay for this. And as we said, they need to put some, you know, skin in the game. I think they've known it, we've said that. The development agreement kind of says that, right? I mean, they have to show us how they're going to pay for it.
Correct. The PUD ordinance that, for the residential development, sets forth that they have to, by June of this year, tell us, you know, they have to commit to a source of the water and sewer, which of course they've done, so they've completed that part early. Then no later than December of this year, they have to come forward with a financial plan to show us exactly how the infrastructure is going to be paid for. And it has to be a plan and financing that's approved by the town to meet our expectations and what we want to see. So the grant agreement gives us basically 3.5 years from now to spend the money. So time is on our side. So we can proceed with the idea that we want to know where the funding's going to come from before we proceed to do anything on it.
So again, I still think that we're okay if we do start the engineering. Once we receive the money, the engineering on the sewer and water is just, there's no construction going on, it's just the designing of the infrastructure.
Correct. I mean, that's something strategically we may want to discuss whether we want to begin anything until we know where the funding's coming from, or do we want to proceed with the engineering? That's something.
Well, I think you can start the engineering, but it still doesn't give them an interest in.
Correct.
By if you start something into the ground. So.
Correct.
How much of that 10 million do you think would go to Showstack?
None of it goes to Showstack. It's all Salem Township, and our engineers are designing the sewer and water, and it will be paid to them by us.
To help them, how much of that? Do you have other projects they can go to besides that?
Yeah.
I mean, is
There are
you
several
could give
property
them 5?
owners. They own most of the property
Yeah.
in the USD, but there are several owners of properties that will benefit from this. And as we've said, we met with 4 of them a few years ago. They have all talked about contributing to this, to pay for it, so it's just not done. Okay, any other
Question about process. There's, the grantee duties talk about submitting quarterly progress reports. Do you think that this is going to come from us, the clerk's department, or do you think this should be coming from Stantec's department? How do you see us fulfilling this?
Let me discuss the process a little bit. When this actually gets going, I mean, assuming the design phase is obviously going to be entirely done by Stantec. Once we get into the construction phase, Stantec, or the township engineers, will act as more or less the project manager for the project. They will prepare the RFPs for us. They will be taking care of these types of progress reports to the state. And although the township board will actually have to eventually approve it, whatever contractors are going to be hired, Stantec will, like I said, they'll do the RFP, they'll get the bids in, the bids will come into the township, and then Stantec will do background checks on all these proposed contractors, however many there are, and they'll make recommendations to the township board on who should be hired. So basically, Stantec will be taking the lead on all of this, making recommendations to the board. The board along the way will have to make certain approvals of certain things, but the big load is going to be carried certainly by Stantec, very little by the township.
Dale?
Just a couple other things that I wanted to bring out in here. One of them is kind of jump ahead of ourselves here, and if we approve this tonight, I really do believe, and I'm going to probably, I'm pointing the fingers back at myself here, but I think we really do need a point person within the township. It's probably Dale or Gary and I, and I'm not saying I'm disagreeing with that, but I think we need publicly to appoint a person that's going to be in charge of this, because Stantec is going to have to be submitting the reports, and the reports are probably going to have to come from us, so it'll be a pass-through. There's going to be financials that are going to be involved. I've already talked with the bank. We're going to set up a separate bank account for this to get the interest. I'm already have talked with Michigan Class. We will set up a account with them that is directly tied to the account that's going to be set up for this, so we have complete isolation, so this cannot get back into it. Now, the other thing that's involved here is your trip, Gary's time, your time. There's other expenses that have been incurred with the setting up of this grant. And the SAW grant, which I am very familiar with, there was $6,700 of that set aside for setting up the SAW grant. That is a legal charge that we can charge back. The time that we spend in here can be billed back to this as well. So if we're doing that, the thing of it is, we're going to be talking about the budget tonight. We're going to be getting a $5 million right up front. We're going to have to be adding $5 million to our budget, because it's not just a pass-through. Because it's going to be a pass-through, we have to control that money, and it has to be all accounted for. So it's a bigger issue than just pass the motion and wait for the state to give us money. We have to be ready for it, and that's why I'm setting up here. And I agree that I've already taken the steps for it, and I'm not saying I'm not, but I think publicly we need to ensure that Dell and I will be co-signatures on the checks, so that they'll probably will have a ownership of this whole process. So I think that I feel more comfortable with making sure that the board knows that they have a person to go to. We should have the information for the board when it comes forward.
I was going to suggest that that account has to be set up, obviously that dedicated account, and there has to be some checks and balances for that, because once this, assuming this agreement is approved tonight and signed by the township, the first $5 million will be immediately available in the state.
Do you think we are ready? Because I read somewhere that it says we can't make the draw unless it's no earlier than 120 days, which is 4 months.
Correct.
You're thinking we're gonna start right away.
Yeah, that doesn't mean we won't get the money, for 120 days. What that means, the agreement provides that once this is fully executed, we'll get the first $5 million. That money will be put into a dedicated account. But what that 120-day limitation is that we can't take out money to pay Stantec unless we get an invoice from them. We can't do more than 120 days before we know what that expense is going to be. It's just giving the state a little bit of control. They don't want us withdrawing money without having any invoices in hand and saying, okay, we need $5 million, we're going to take it out right now and spend it. So it's giving the state just a little bit of control over the timing. We have to have some expenditures coming in before we, start drawing on the account.
Hey, Jim, got a question?
Yeah, quickly. Whose money gets spent first? Showstacks or the townships?
It's all the township's money.
Even the Showstack money? They're gonna commit to 3 million or whatever it is out of the 13, you're gonna use this 10?
Well, initially, the first 900 and some thousand that it's going to take for engineering would come from the grant, but as far as the additional monies to actually pay to put in the water and sewer, we're gonna need to know where that money's coming from. It's gonna have to be available before we begin any construction.
Just for clarification, if Showstack will be paying into the, basically, they'll be paying us, and we will still be paying the contractors, correct?
I'm not sure I followed your question.
I mean, with the grant money, we're gonna be paying, ultimately, we'll be paying the contractors and whoever else, and consultants and all that stuff. But Showstack, when they add their money to the pot, that will go directly to us, and then we will distribute that money as well, correct?
Correct, that's the way it should work, Kathy, because we have to hire, it'll be the township that has the contracts with the contractors and those doing the construction.
So the money from Showstack will actually be coming to the township for redistribution to the.
Or any property.
So outside of the grant money, any money that Showstack would bring to the table, we would have control of, is what you're saying?
They would, you have to do it through an escrow account or something, right?
And that's for all property owners.
And that would be true for all property.
Right.
And
In the US.
whoever fronts the money, then we'll have to work out a formula or an agreement that when other properties come online, they will get reimbursed for what they put up front, assuming that, you know, they spend more than their proportional share for their property.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, so let's say, so Showstack pays it all, let's just say they pay the 3 million, but there's other property owners that are gonna benefit from that, will they end up having to put in at some point in time, and then Showstack can get a little bit of their money back?
Correct, if they don't put in, if the other property owners don't put money in initially, if it's all Showstack money to make up that additional $1 million, then when the other property owners come online, if they want water and sewer service, they're going to have to reimburse Showstack
Good.
for what they put into it.
Yeah, I had a question, Mr. Plato. I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, but I was just wondering why on that design of utilities, that $1 million, that was the figure given, the design of water and sewer system, why does that just automatically go to Stantec on a project like that being bid?
The reason is the Stantec is the township's engineers, they're designated engineers, and they have been involved with the USD development for years and years, and they've actually been working with the design of the water and sewer in there. They're aware of what needs to go in there. They've done a lot of background research already, so to bring in somebody else at this point, they have to charge a lot of money to reinvent the wheel for work that Stantec's already done.
And they have been somebody else to look at the price.
Right.
Showstack, they're engineers.
Yes, HRC, another engineering firm, has also looked at the price that Stantec has given to us and have agreed that that's proper and appropriate.
Okay, good.
Mr. Supervisor, if I could just share this comment from a timing standpoint as well, is that if we pull the trigger on this grant and authorize Stantec to move forward with design, that's going to take several months for them to complete that part of the project.
Well, I think it's 6 to 8.
6 to 8 months. And by that time, as Mr. Plato shared earlier, Showstack has a deadline of the end of this year to provide the financing plan. And I think we need to draw another line in the sand that if they, that nothing's going forward past the design standpoint until they come up with the financing plan for the rest of the project. So in reference to Mr. Quigley's question about where's the rest of the money, is it gonna be ours or Showstack? It's Showstack. The rest of the 10 million doesn't even get spent until we've got a financial plan, either through them or that they work together in concert with the other major stakeholders in the USD to come up with that financing plan. My only other concern, Mr. Supervisor, is that I think we as a board need to determine what's the priority as far as what does go forward after that financial plan is presented to us for approval. And that is whether we're going to authorize the sewer to be constructed first or the water system. And I think we need to have that discussion. I don't know that if we have to have it tonight, but I think at some point in time, before any construction work gets even considered, that we need to have that determination, that we dictate what project gets done first. What do we think is the most important for our community, and not the whims of a certain developer that wants to develop in the US state.
I would think the engineers, excuse me, would have a determination, a better determination on what would go first. Typically, the main structure would go first, which would be the sanitary, especially if it's going to be at a certain depth. Water is usually one of the last things that go in on a development. That's just my past history. But I think the engineers would have a better say on that when the time does come.
And keep in mind, the design that $900,000 is going to be spent on design is going to be designing both water and sewer concurrently. So those designs will be complete, and at that point, we'll be in a better position to know what the financial situation is and whether we're going to proceed forward from that point on out.
One quick question. Have you heard any other remarks that an additional 10 million or additional grant may be proceeding in the following year? In this coming year?
Well, the state is very closed-lipped about that. Obviously, we didn't know this 10 million was coming in until after it was done. And I assume the same thing will happen this year. We won't know until sometime after.
I mean, the budget for the state has already been submitted. Has it been approved yet?
No, I think it's not until July that it gets approved. Yeah. So we won't know until sometime after July, if there's additional monies coming.
Dan? It seems like the first priority should be to set up the escrow account. And then the money's channeled into the escrow account before anything. Seems like that.
We have an escrow account for the Showstack development, but we don't have a separate dedicated account to put these grant funds in at this point.
So that should be set up. Shouldn't that be
That has
the
to be
first
separate.
thing?
Yeah, obviously, we can't take any money until we know.
That's
we
what I'm
have a
saying.
place to put it.
Before you get the grant, you gotta have the account to put it in.
I'll be setting that account up tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll hold it.
As long as it's an FDL conversation.
So my wife has a question. So I don't know if you're allowed to talk.
I know, and it's probably really stupid, but it just kind of ran across my head, and I just wondered, I know that we don't want the township to be liable for anything on this, okay, so my question was, is when you were saying that all the money is going to be funded through this account, and that the township is going to be writing all the checks to all the contractors and everyone, so let's just say one of those contractors has something with Showstack or one of the other landowners, and they are upset or whatever, and they want to sue Showstack or one of the other landowners. But we're controlling all the money, so does that put the township in a position where they could be drawn into it because they are the controller of the money? I mean, it's probably a really stupid question, I'm just a stupid person.
No question is stupid.
But it just kind of ran across my mind, is that an area where if we're controlling everything that's
Your
coming
2
in?
minutes are up.
Does that make any sense? I just figured out how to do it. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I know I'm crazy. You know what I'm getting at?
No, I think that's a very valid question. I think, in addition to just having the money available, there will be other guarantees and insurances in place, such as the contractor will have to provide a performance bond. So if a contractor for some reason bails out, they'll have a performance bond to back that up. So there'll be other protections built in to these various contracts and things as for the actual construction.
Okay.
If that's what you need.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, even if we're in control of everything, of the money and whatever, that it's not putting us in some kind of position that someone would come after the township.
Now you know who runs the township.
The township has quite a bit of protection from any tort liability or negligence because of governmental immunity. The only other potential liability would be contractual liability. So obviously, we're going to make sure that in any of those contracts that we enter into with contractors, that we're fully protected and indemnified by them, so that we don't have that situation where the township's going to be subject to litigation.
Thank you,
Yes.
Well, I was gonna ask the question about the insurance, because this section 15 talks about that the grantee shall maintain such insurance to protect, but then it also says that the obligation shall not be limited to the limits of liability imposed under the grantee's insurance policy. So does that mean that we are going to have to increase the amount of insurance that we have, and if so, where does that money come from?
They have not required, the state has not required any particular limits of insurance. They're just saying that, basically if somebody absconds with grant money or something, does something in violation of this agreement, then the township is agreeing to indemnify the state for that money. They don't want to be stuck pulling the bag if someone takes off the money and goes to the Virgin Islands. But they have not said anything about increasing our any of our limits of liability at this point.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we have a second, right? Okay. Mr. Trent, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's passed. Okay, moving on down to the Hamlet Streetscape Project.
I move that Salem Township approve moving forward with the Hamlet Streetscape project. The design is based on a concept developed by the Planning Commission and presented to the Township Board at the regular board meeting on September 12, 2017. The scope of the project is detailed in the attached documents from Carlisle Wortman and Stantec Engineering. The cost of the project is estimated at $500,000, and the board authorizes using funds from the reserve account. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so you see, board, before you on the cost of the project. One of the big expenses were the power lines that have to be, well, actually, they gave us 3 proposals. To put them underground was almost the price of the $500,000, but the cost of moving the lines and combining the power lines and moving them up was the proposal 1 that we are looking at is $175,600 for the power lines. Again, this is the construction of from the railroad tracks going west, and of course the power lines are on the north side, 6 mile. The other is the construction. The cost would include all the engineering that has to be done on it. The project will go up to Salem Road. There would be sidewalks on both sides of the street. And also the trees. The other thing is we did find out that we do have that, if you remember a few months ago about the tree litigation fund, where they don't plant trees, they put it in a fund, and I think that's like almost $20,000. So we can actually put that in to save some costs on planting the trees along 6 Mile Road.
Perfect use for it.
Any other comments? Or we can take any from the audience.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yep.
Could you elaborate on what the recommended approach would be from a construction standpoint? Because I guess I'm not clear as to what is being recommended as far as the power lines, current lighting, and how many lights would be installed on both sides.
Yeah, in the report, I don't know if they have the number of street lights that are there. These would be, these were estimates by Stantec that put the design in with Carlisle Wortman and the number of trees. CJ, do they
If
have?
you might wanna see, I have these.
Yeah.
which is construction costs from McFadden to Dickerson, and then from Dickerson to Pearl, and it breaks it down. This started when the Planning Commission were reviewing the master plan. State of Michigan, you have to review and resubmit your master plan every 5 years. So we started going over it probably a couple of years ago. And so there's one here, 2009, talks about Hamlet beautification. Nothing has been done, it's now 9 years later. And then I found this Focus Salem, which was written in 1996. And they were talking in 1996 about, we really would like to do something. They took surveys of the residents. And it was something that the community did want. So here we are, almost 20 years later. And while, you know, I had sticker shock when I found out about the telephone poles, it's like, either we're just never gonna do it, or we need to do something, at least the power, you know, they provided us with a little bit more palatable than burying the lines, which would have been over 600,000. Moving the lines, which would have been like 270-some thousand, or just raising the poles, so that we could put in some streetscapes, some trees, some lights. Something that has been written down for over 20 years.
Mr. Supervisor, just a quick question. When I seen this, my biggest concern is, which I think it's always been a problem in the Hamlet, is the water, the storm runoff. I see catch basins, I see a lot more pavement, I see sidewalks, and the ditches filled in, and I don't see, just now, this being handed to me, any kind of storm system construction, and where would that water go?
Right. Most of the water from the road here, Dickerson, would be directed towards the ditches that are further, you know, that would be the next phase.
Further west?
Further west. That's where most of the water goes to now. They did, when they redid the road, they did fix it up pretty well. I don't know if you've been, the only problem we still have is a drain down here by the post office. But again, you know, in the engineering, they, you know, we kind of pointed out where when there's a heavy rain or something like that, this is where we have the most problems, so the engineers are already addressing that.
At one time, right after the construction, I know there was issues with the church down there getting in and out. Have those all been resolved, you know?
The church what?
There was right on the corner, there was drains and sewer and all that stuff. Have those all been resolved?
We haven't had any more flooding there. The one drain that goes across 6 Mile that runs down Salem up through the school to the Johnson Creek, that's another one that we've been looking at, and I believe the SAW grant is part of that. But the cleaning and everything has been fine.
Okay.
So far. Any other questions on this? Yes.
You said we could talk.
Yes.
Okay, so you're proposing $500,000 for 700 feet, 800 feet, Salem Road to the railroad tracks?
Right.
Okay, why, and you said absolutely hands down for the money for the walking path because it was too expensive by the mile. Now, that doesn't compute either, but I wanna know, my other two questions are, the residents here, you're going to make their property more expensive, more beautified, more better is not good, better, and are they going to be informed before you do this if their taxes are going up? And my other question is, if you're putting sidewalks in, who's going to keep the sidewalks clean? Who's going to be responsible for the sidewalks if somebody slips on them? And how are you going to impose that on the residents that these sidewalks don't in front of? If you put a sidewalk in front of my house and then it becomes my problem to keep it plowed and clean, and my insurance goes up because I have to be liable for that. That's what I wanna know, what you're gonna do with these people that are out here. The veterinary, urban, all those people on that side, all the people down that side, of the Salem Road.
Well, first off, let me answer the tax questions that you have. The taxable value of your house will not go up more than the COD, but that's the cost. Your assessed value may go up, but you don't pay taxes on your assessed value, you pay it on taxable value, and that only goes up by whatever the state says it goes up every year. So this will not have an adverse impact on the taxes that the residents will pay on that because of that.
If his property costs more, his taxes won't go up?
No.
If his property is worth more, his taxes won't go up?
That's the assessed value. You do not pay taxes on your assessed value, you pay taxes on the taxable value. The taxable value on Proposition A back in 1993 says that it only can go up by the least of whatever the state, and basically the state now is coming back and sets that cost of whatever it is, COD, COP is, whatever it is, that is set by the state, and that goes up by the value of the real estate property of the state, not by whatever you put improvements on your house.
That's not true. That's not true. That's not true.
For years, we've been going over the master plan, as TJ knows. We've had all kinds of the planning consultants drawing up all these schematics about all this beautifying of the hamlet. We spent meeting after meeting ad nauseum about it. We decided last summer that why can't, as a planning commission, why can't we take some action rather than just talk about this for years? So we went to the planner and we said, how about by fall, we have an action plan to give to the board? And so we worked at that, and we got the plan, and we submitted it to the board. And I give the board tremendous credit for moving ahead with this. In the scheme of things, I don't think people will be mad if the property values go up, especially if their taxes don't go up at all. So that's a positive, a very positive. And who doesn't want to beautify Salem and make it a more community to be proud of? A community that maybe will entice more people to want to come here. And maybe entice people to want to put in a little boutique or something like that when you've got all the outside improvements that you're proposing to make. So I just stand in favor. I think this is progress. I think $500,000 isn't very much for the township. I think we can afford it. In the scheme of a municipality doing something like this, it's really not very much money. If you went back to the 70s, it would be like maybe a tenth of that. So, you know, in the scheme of things. So I'm all for it.
I don't want to weigh in on whether you should spend the money or not. You were elected to make that decision. But if you improve your property, you increase value, you do indeed pay additional tax on that increased value. If you add an addition to your house and it increases the value of your house, your assessor will increase your taxes. Taxes are capped, and this is infrastructure, so you're not actually improving the structure itself. But that does need to be clarified, because there are a lot of people in this room who are walking away. You put an addition on your house, you're going to pay taxes on the addition.
That's right.
Yep.
But
Because that comes on, basically what you're doing is you're uncapping that.
No,
But if
you're not
you make
no.
improvements- if you
Dale,
make
I don't
no
want to argue.
improvements- If you make no improvements to your house, the taxable value goes up by what the cost of the state says. The
Correct.
assessed value. We have had many people come in here during the board reviews and ask to have their taxable value increased, because when they go to the bank, if they have a house that's worth so much, they can only borrow so much money on the value of that house. If that value of the house is increased, they can now get more value out of it from the assessed value of it. Well, when it comes to the taxable value is what you pay taxes on.
Dale.
Now, if it comes uncapped, or any of that, then you put the additions on, that's true. But that is not, they're not putting an addition on or increasing the footprint of their house because it basically comes down to the square footage.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that your taxes go up by the cost of living increase, or 5%, whichever is less. That's what state law says. I'm disagreeing with the statement that was made that if you improve your property, your taxes don't increase. That's the portion, that's all I'm dealing with. There's a lot of people in the room who that's what they heard. And all I'm saying is if you improve your property, your taxes increase. This is an infrastructure improvement. It's not to the building. I'm not disagreeing with you. I want to simply clarify the one statement. I don't want an argument about it. Thank you.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, just had a question. It stops at Salem Road, which is right here. But yet the church is, I mean, past Salem Road, you still have a downtown look. The church would not be part of that then. Anything west of Salem Road, but yet it's still part of the downtown.
Right, well,
Or or it has the downtown look to the hamlet. So I just wonder why we're stopping it at Salem Road and not.
I think it's one section at a time. I think once you get beyond it, then you've got a real drain issue that you gotta address.
Serious drain issue.
Okay.
You have a serious drain issue in what they
I think
want.
you gotta start somewhere.
They flood Pearl.
Yes.
Hey, will any of the businesses or the residents involved have to pay anything?
I'm sorry, what?
Will any of the businesses or the residents involved have to pay anything towards this? You know, if you own property,
No,
they won't have to pay nothing, huh?
no.
Then I also heard a couple weeks ago that you were thinking about tearing Furman's house down for a parking lot. Is there any truth to that?
Here we go.
Well, Furman?
No comment.
No, but the people won't have to pay nothing against that?
No, and then as far as the sidewalks, shoveling, I mean, it's really up to like they are now.
I think the sidewalk, for one thing, is not on private property. My line starts 6 inches off the sidewalk, so that sidewalk belongs to the council.
Then they're gonna have to clean it then, right?
Yeah, you just gotta clean it, Furman. Just settle down and start doing it. Don't cry about it.
Okay, let's move on, yeah, Dave?
Help us understand, what's involved with the DTE and the raising of the poles that are currently
Right.
there? And why does what looks like a standard 8 or 9 foot high street light impact?
Well, the
what we're trying to
trees,
do?
number one, the lights evidently have something, that's what they have said, why the lines have to be, the poles have to go higher and they have to bundle.
Oh, it's
If
the
you're gonna keep
poles.
it. Right.
The light, okay, I was thinking the major overhead lights, it's the light poles.
Okay,
Yeah,
anything
here,
else?
before you hang up.
Yeah.
What do the residents think about this? Or is this something you guys are gonna do? Have you surveyed to see what the people thought about this? I mean, like
We
spending
heard a lot of
$500,000
comments
and
from
something like that?
people.
Or are you guys just gonna take it upon yourself and do it?
Oh, we've heard a lot of people that want to see.
You might have heard a lot. Okay, what about the other half?
Jerry, who's paying the electric bill on your new lights?
The residents, Furman?
Okay, anybody else?
Good luck, Furman.
Okay, now let's call for the vote. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Moving on down, so the clock's not working, it's 10 after 8. So, all right. Okay, so we're down to the reports, revenues, down to the chief. Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Keep it brief. Slow time. We had 3 structure fires in January. One of them was a fairly large structure fire off of Chuck Road, got into the ceiling and raised the roof line. Upon arrival, the fire was already through the roof. We did stop it at the roof line, didn't make it down the walls, but it is an old house with black and plasters. This is a very challenging to hold out. We had a chimney fire, that seems to be a reoccurring theme throughout the season. We ask folks to just get their chimneys cleaned or professionally looked at. So we get every year we get 5 or 6 days. And then we had a fish tank that caught on fire. We talked about that last time. The beauty of that was that having these smaller vehicles there, we were there before the engine, so before it spread to the stacked wall of paints and the furnace and everything else that was right next to it, we were able to extinguish it with a hand extinguisher, which really saved a lot of damage to the process.
That's right, we give them
We want to thank our neighbors for responding to these calls. The fires were pretty tough because of the weather conditions. It was, the Chubb Road fire was extremely snowy, windy, cold, and the roads were all ice. Matter of fact, the tanker parked on the road, and as it dewatered, the tanker slid to the edge of the road. So the county came out very thankfully and put the sand out to help us out so that we didn't create an ice rink for once we left. The other thing I'll mention, and just kind of on a personal note, I don't know if anybody's house is like mine, but the gutter's been leaking and having icicles everywhere. And the gutters was leaking out on my furnace intake and discharge. So much so that it was an ice block. And my wife said, gee, it's getting awfully cold in the house. And I went downstairs and changed the furnace filter out. And I noticed the furnace was starting and stopping. So I went outside and sure enough, both the intake and the exhaust, because of the amount of snow that we had and the dripping, was a complete block of ice. So I recommend that you maybe take a peek if your furnace, if you got one of those high efficiency furnaces, you might have, a low discharge, and it might be a problem with this dripping ice water.
The instant hot water also has an exhaust that can block up too. I had that happen already.
So just kind of a safe note, CO detectors would be helpful, and just maybe take a mosey walk because the snow got pretty deep here. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, so moving down to board discussion is the 2018-19 budget. Board members that you have. Just a couple comments about it. Our budget is $2.8 million. Increase for the board up here. I don't know if you're in favor for board increases. Anybody want to stand up and? No? I thought you said you were going to. So again, no raises for the board.
Again. I think you should have one, Mr. Supervisor, and Mr. Treasurer, and Mr. Clerk.
So for 5 years, we're not taking it anymore. So we still are at the same rate. Our trustees are the same rate. Our employees, I believe it's a 2% increase for the people that are working in the township. That's reflected. What else? No, has changed.
We raised our revenue from the landfill a little bit more than last year. Last year, we had host agreement revenue at $700,000, but we went up to $800,000 this year. And landfill power plant revenue, we went from 1 million to 1.1. So we're
Is that
experiencing.
too low? We got the landfill sitting back there.
No, that's correct.
Yes, Scott.
Why wouldn't we give the board a raise?
I'm just teasing.
No, I'm not teasing, I'm serious.
I think
As much money as this township generates from the dumping and all this stuff, why wouldn't we give the board a raise?
Why?
Don't embarrass me.
I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. You folks have to put up quite a bit sometimes.
No, We appreciate it. I know Dale and Del and myself, you know, we all have, well, Dale's retired. So he's getting social security and, you know, we all have jobs but we appreciate serving the township. I know these guys to the right and left of me.
Why don't you do it for free then?
Yeah.
Talk about embarrassing.
That's it, Colton, you're done. That's the last meal you'll ever get. Sherry takes all the food. Yes, sir.
I calculate that you're working for probably less than $2 an hour when I take a look at all the hours you put in.
Yeah.
And all going around and seeing all the people. I know Dale and Del, all of you guys put time in. So I just, as a resident, really appreciate what you're doing because it's almost voluntary. The money is not there.
Well, that's why, you know, in the future, whatever happens, of course, I'm gonna do this job until I die. So, but if other new people come in, I'm sure people, you know, that don't have a job or they wanna use this as a full-time job, then the township's gonna have to think about benefits and everything else, 'cause none of us take that, so. But I got good guys to serve with, and as I've told you before, I'm so blessed to have these people here and all the people who work here at the township and the great staff, and there's something to say about that, so we got some good people.
Well, I'll just add my 2 cents. And the fact is that coming on and taking this job, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But after being here, I count it a privilege to be able to serve every one of you. To have you come into the office, we have taxes, we'll be able to work things out. I get a personal pleasure from that money can't buy. And to me, that is the blessing that I have and why I'm here, because I enjoy meeting and being with people and trying to help as best I can. I know I don't like to bill bills every twice a year, but that's what it is. But it's a pleasure to serve.
Okay. Just a couple things about the budget, just so everybody knows. You may not have all the budgets that we have, but if you download it, it's the very, very last page. Basically, it's our budget over the last 3 years. And in 2015-16, we are really a conservative board. We put almost $694,000 in our reserve account 3 years ago. So it's not like we spend all the money every year. We put 700,000 of it into like an investment account. 2016-17 was 350,000, and this year we're not really sure yet exactly where we're at. We're going to come through with that, but I'm sure it's going to be a couple $100,000 at least into the investment account. So
I think that when we came into office, we were roughly 7 million, I should say, 7,500,000 in the bank. We have, as of now, and you gotta remember, we have done a lot. I think we've done a lot. We bought a new tanker truck, was $500,000. We spent $1.5 million on 235 acres. Park, we've did North Territorial, which was something that was really needed. And now we keep getting money in, and I believe our reserves are up to.
I'm just going into the messenger, we're sitting a little over $9.8 million right now in the bank. Right. So, and I will add to that, is that every year we get dinged by the auditors. They come back and they say, you guys need to come up with a capital expenditure plan, capital improvement plan. Because normally you are way over ratio. You got too much money in the bank, you really need to spend it. And so for that reason, I mean, everybody wants to hold on to it.
For what?
But on the other reason is that I think things like when we enhance the beauty of the hamlet here, and maybe we'll want to in the years, continue on down the street. When we go back and see the improvements that was done here, it's good. I'll put another little toot in here, because I'm working on it diligently. And I want to see those 2 rooms back in there rehabbed. Those
the
two
bathrooms
bathrooms.
are-
I don't think I'm gonna get any arguments from anybody. It's like.
And our entrance doors are falling apart.
Yeah, we got entrance door issues, we got doors out there, so we're working diligently on trying to get something done here to spruce this place up a little bit. Got new lights.
Those are all LED lights, so saving a lot of energy.
Okay, so as far as the budget that's here, proposed budget, there will be a public hearing on it in March, next month's meeting, to approve it. And any other, yes, Mr. Trent?
Question and then a comment. On what's listed as page 8, toward the bottom of the page, the Michigan SAW grant, Hamlet sewer revenue. Is there a carryover that we're anticipating for the next fiscal year? I don't see it reflected in the requested budget. And I know we haven't spent everything yet, so just
I
wondering.
don't know exactly how, Bill can answer this probably better than I, but what happened here is we started out this whole process running the whole SAW grant out of the general, and we found out that we could not do that. We have to have it under the sewer account. So basically, the money's coming in and out of the sewer account, not the general account.
Okay. As far as roads for this next year, with some of the roads that are deteriorating, I don't know if they're considered local roads that we would have to contribute, or if it's a county road, but I think most of us would agree that Curry between 6 and 8 mile is in very much need of repair. And whatever we can do to help prioritize that section, whether it's the county responsibility or ours.
It's the county. We're hoping that's gonna be one of their projects, hoping.
They haven't.
We haven't met
With
with them
the
yet.
county tax millage money that they get for roads, what they're going to prioritize.
That, and then 6 Mile down here by the landfill is a disaster. And it's dangerous. I mean, we gotta figure out something with that.
Is that right there at the intersection?
Yeah, that, and then there's the narrow of the road and the trucks, and
Yeah,
it's
it's way
it's
narrow.
just terrible. Whatever, so. We'll usually meet with them in March, I think, so we should get some feedback with what are the plans for that.
House 6 guys. Really?
All right?
They got no money.
All right. All right, so any other general updates that we need to talk about? If not, we're down to public comment. Yes, Bob.
Mr. Plato, just had a quick question for you. Back to that Metro Act, where most of the main roads in Salem Township, the right of ways are owned by the county, and we have very little power or say to what goes on in those. Is that correct?
Okay. Bob?
We've got a sewer contractor in Salem, it's B&B Stonky. He does huge subdivision and sewer. He should probably give a opportunity to bid on the sewer project if it comes up.
Okay.
But I think he's big enough to do that project.
Okay. We'll let them know. All right, anybody else? Yes.
I just want to make an announcement about the Salem South Lyon District Library. This year began cooperating with an institute called the Harwood Center for Public Innovation. And they're setting up what they describe as kitchen table conversations for the community. And there's going to be an event, Advanced Disposal is hosting it. It's at 7 p.m. a week from tonight on February 20th at Carl's Cabin. Anybody from the community is welcome to come. It's not a chat about the library, it's not a chat about the landfill, it's a chat about what you guys want to chat about. and there's gonna be free food and drink there, so come hungry and join in this conversation.
Okay, thank you.
If you want to see, if you need a flyer, again, it's a week from tonight, come see me for a flyer, they're also available at the township office.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe, did you guys move your entrance for the residents?
Yeah, do you want me to mention that?
Yeah, I was gonna mention it, but since Jim.
Yeah, no, the other thing about the landfill, many of you take advantage of the customer drop-off area, we call it. It's where you drop off your trash and recycling. For the purpose of getting our residential vehicle traffic further away from all those tractor trailers that come in, we've moved the entrance to that down Napier Road. It's between the railroad tracks and 5 Mile now, as opposed to where all the trucks come in, which is north near 6 Mile. So it's a new drop-off area, so keep going south on Napier and go in there. You'll have a lot more space. It's a nicer area right now, and you'll be away from those big trucks.
If we went in here today to drop off some recycling, is there any plan to fill those deep holes that you have to drive across there?
Yes, we are. It'll probably be this summer, we'll have to do that. And there's some,
You can't put some gravel in or something? Some of those things are this deep.
they're not quite that deep, but we will put some patch in there when the weather breaks a little bit, gets a little warmer out, we'll put something in there. And the other thing we're doing also, we're checking the residents' passes. We've had some misuse of people, you know, coming in there, not being a Salem Township resident, and it's free for residents. It's household only. It's not commercial. So we have a girl in there, she's asking for your ID and your pass, so just so everybody knows. And we spent a lot of money on this drop-off center. We've probably spent, you know, $500,000 to put this thing in. So it's gonna make things a lot nicer. It's gonna be a lot more convenient for the residents. And we still take cash customers there, that people wanna come in, they're not a Salem resident, they can still come there, and they have a pickup truck and a trailer, they can unload there.
When did this change take place?
Last week.
Is there signage at the other entrance so that regular citizens would know where to go?
No, we're gonna get some signs up. Most people, they don't really look at the signs, but we will put some up down there because there's so much traffic. They're just looking for the entrance to go inside.
Yeah, we have a newsletter that's going out, so we want to make sure we're going to put that in the newsletter, but it would help, I mean, you know, for somebody waiting in line there and then finding out.
Yeah, we will put some signage up there, so it'll be seen hopefully. I did stop to talk to Ann, she's gonna put it on your website.
Right.
We put it on our website. So word of mouth, it'll get around pretty quick, but we will put some signage.
Yes. Yeah.
Couple things, when I went to landfill, prior to them moving to Napier Road, everybody that was pretty much coming through there is residents, you know, they had stated, hey, we're gonna be moving at this such and such time, so I mean, they were pretty attitude about warning everybody that they were moving. I mean, it just depends on if you took garbage there in the last couple weeks or not. The second thing is, Gary, who contacts the county, or do we know if they're gonna do anything with the trees that are hanging so low on Tower Road between Angle Road and 6? Because they're really hanging. I
Between
mean,
Tower and 6?
yes, on them curves and
Between 6 and,
on Tower Road.
On Tower,
between 6 and Angle.
and Angle.
Right by the cemetery and around the curves, and
Yeah.
'cause they're really hanging hard.
Are they dead, or are they just, they're just trees covering the road?
Well, there's some limbs that could go, but there's trees that are really covering the road hard.
Kenny, have you ever been down Salem Road? When I was on the fire department, they had to go like this to keep it from pulling the ladders off.
I do that. That's why I was asking the question. But if this is Tower Road.
I guess they got some grant money to do,
Good.
territorial or something that's,
They're doing that now.
yeah.
Yeah, they're doing that now.
With all them dead trees in there, so
Get
that's.
some paint, and spray on them, and they'll take them down for you.
So that's a good thing, finally to get some of that cleaned up. All right, I'll check on that. Okay, anybody else? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, Mr. Rizzo and I went to a meeting with Advanced Disposal, and at the Hilton Hotel. And up until this last meeting we had, it wasn't that good of a turnout. But there were quite a few people there from Northville this time, not too happy about the dump, I should say, that's what they call it, but it's advanced disposal. And most of their questions were answered, but I don't really think they left too happy. They weren't, in my estimation, they'll never be happy.
Well, you know, whether you agree or disagree, the issue is though, the odors that have been going on down there. Sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. There are some people that could be reporting something false, but it is bad sometimes. And I know the Advance is here tonight, and I'm just saying, we're copied on all these emails, and I see them every night. And sometimes I go down there, you don't smell it, but other times you do. But again, the infrastructure that they're talking about doing down there should help eliminate a lot of the problems they're having. The problem is, it's just taking too long. I mean, who would know that we would still be talking about this? So, you know, I mean, not to get into the stories of the past, but it's just, you know, they own the gas wells now, they didn't own them before. It just was so much that, you know, you're gonna believe what you want, but the facts are there, and hopefully, pretty soon here, it's gonna get under control, so.
Hey, Carrie, can
Yes.
I make one comment? We're waiting on a public hearing coming up in March, and we're waiting on the state to give us approval to finish our gas system. So like Gary said, once that gas system is finished, there should be, you know, a better result with the odors and the gas system at the site, where it'll be able to produce more gas will go to the Florida Star, which will send off to the power grid. So it's all good stuff, but just nothing moves very fast
Right.
sometimes.
And the problem is, I mean, I've been out here for 25 years, and we've all known that occasionally, the compost pile, whatever, you're gonna get some smells, okay? It's been there, the hill's been there since the 60s or whatever, or the landfill has. And so, you know, that's an issue that people have, you know, it's been there. And unfortunately, the wind goes that way. But like you say, you're not gonna please everybody.
And my problem is those people knew it was theirs in their title.
Right.
Now they let brand spanking new homes be built. And Mr. Hicks is making a big issue out of it and close Napier Road down because of his attitude towards us. And he went down to the county and actually, he didn't have a public meeting or anything. He just closed the road. I don't know.
Herman?
Yeah, I was gonna ask him about the gas or the candle we got going out there. We're burning a lot of gas that we should be getting paid when making electricity.
That's a good point. The reason we're doing the upgrade of the system, because right now the system cannot handle the odors in that corner. So we turn that temporary flare on, the candlestick. It'll burn we'll have that there till the end of this year. By that time, we'll have the new header pipe in and all the new advanced technology we need, and we won't need that there. We'll be pulling all that gas to the gas plant.
Are you, I see in the paper about Northville, you're having a meeting with them to put in another candle?
Yeah, let's put another candle there by you guys will not see it. There'll be another candle by the gas plant of 5,000. But yeah, there's a public meeting at Northville High School in the middle of March 19th or 17th, something like that. It's posted.
Wouldn't it be better to make it electricity with it than to let it off into the air?
Well, right now, we're just it's there to control odors right now. But yeah, you're right, it'd be better for
I thought the
power.
only thing you're getting away from is the smell.
No, it serves its purpose right now, and once the new infrastructure stuff goes in, it won't be there, you won't see it, and it'll pull all that gas to the gas plant.
Well, what are you gonna do, set it inside of a silo?
It'll be a gas flare on the other side, right beside the gas plant.
Okay.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
The public forums have been very interesting. I think a lot of the citizens could come there, and if you're very interested, they have their experts there. So they're explaining the rationale of what they're doing, they're explaining the science behind it. You have the opportunity to talk to the scientists right there that are trying to abate the problems, and also learn about our system itself, like which way the water flow is in the township, and how do they test to make sure it's not contaminated. So if you're very interested in the landfill, that you want to find out, you want to speak to the experts, they're hosting the meetings and covering, and they've been very gracious to take any good, bad, or indifferent question and try to answer it. So they're offering another public forum. They're bringing the experts in for odors, I think was the last discussion. If you're interested,
Joe, when is that? When is the next meeting?
Yeah, our next meeting, and we're not gonna have the odor experts at that one, but we're gonna set up that one. But we will be having a meeting on Thursday, March 1st. I didn't wanna say that because it's in the same location as this other community meeting, but that's it's called the Arbor Hills Community Advisory Group. We've got a few members of that group in this room. We reached out to some folks from Northville on that group as well. It's moderated. We do bring in our experts. We've had our water quality testing experts, our gas system experts come in.
Is that Carl's?
It's at Carl's.
Right.
Yeah, and you can look up the
Free drinks?
There will definitely be free drinks. Or some.
I'll be there.
But all the records of those meetings, it's all meant for public consumption. We have videos of these presentations. They're all at arborhills.info. It's probably way more information than you'd ever think you'd want to know about a landfill, about water testing, about air quality, things like that. But we just want to discuss this openly and open the doors to you about how we operate and what we do. So that's why we have this group meets regularly every month to 6 weeks. And at arborhills.info, you can always catch up on what's been discussed and when the next meeting is.
Okay. All right, just a few, yes, Lori?
So just a question for the landfill again. Do you have any kind of voice at all with the county about fixing that pothole at the corner of Meadow and Ditch?
We fixed
Or
it.
maybe putting some gravel on the shoulder to keep some of the dirt off the road?
We did fix the pothole once when we regraded the road out there on Napier. They threw a bunch of excess in that hole. I know. That's
When
Wayne
I go to
County.
Home Depot, it's like, I really don't like driving.
Well, I called the county on that. I told them to bring a truckload of gravel out to fill, or patch to fit in that hole. They brought enough out there to fit the one hole in the bottom, but they didn't fill the rest of it, so I called them twice and they refused to fill.
Just remember the advance too, that you're gonna, once we get Chubb Road and
I was
5
just gonna
Mile
say that,
paved,
Gary.
then we're gonna have you won't even have to go by that way, so.
Sounds good.
Be the new route.
That didn't mean.
Okay,
You guys are the county.
just a couple comments.
Scrape the snow off. You guys?
Just a couple other comments tonight. First of all, again, I know I want to thank my wife again for all the refreshments. She's going to Florida for a few months, so you might just get store-bought cookies the next couple months. So, anyway, she's headed down there, so I'd like to thank her. So make sure you thank her all her time she does that. Also, a couple things is we've lost some really sweet people in our township here in the last few months here. I don't know, most of you know that Mark Hamilton's mom passed away, a longtime resident here in Salem. And, she had passed, and then also this past week, Wilbur Wilson on 7 by the Wilson Farm, he passed away. He was, I was at the funeral home Sunday. He was 98, I believe he was 98. just a great guy. I don't know if you know the Wilson Farm or the greenhouse, they're on 7 Mile. He lived in a little bungalow down there, but just a, boy, if you ever had time to sit and have a conversation with him, and Lucy's in the nursing home up in South Lyon, assisted living, and she's still, I used to have coffee with them, and they're just a fun couple, but it just, it's hard to see him go. And then the other is Alfred Smithson, we call it Al Smithson, was on North Territorial there in Tower, that piece of property. Al and Arlene, I don't think they've ever missed a meeting. They always sit in the back here. Just a great supporter of mine. I can remember when I first ran for township supervisor in 2012, I said, you know, I'm not going to take one dime from anybody. I just, you know, and I didn't. But I don't know if you know Arlene. She's very stern. You know, she looks at you. You don't know if she's happy. She's going to slap you upside the face, or you don't know. I mean, just Arlene is very stern. But I remember them calling me over, and she had some money in her hand, and I met her, and she says, you are taking this, and I don't want to hear anything. But so they are the ones that gave me something for my campaign back in 2012, and ever since then, they've been so supportive of the township, and they're just loving people. Al, you go by his house there in Territorial in the spring, he was always working outside, just a great supporter. So we're gonna miss him. They had their funeral yesterday, and so these are sweet people. We know we have a lot of people in our township that are getting older, and this past snowstorm that we had, you know, the back roads were pretty terrible. The county, I think, did a halfway decent job getting out there to get to the back roads. Finally, they had some Saturday night and Sunday, they got the rest of them finished. But our elderly people we need to pay attention to. There's some folks down on 7 Mile that they've been snowed for a long time. The ambulance showed up there. I think we got a call there. But anytime you see that, you know, just call the township. We have residents that, we have people in the township that would just pay out of their own pockets to help people who are in our township in need. So we need to hear about it, and we will make sure that somebody plows it and gets it done, because it's sad to see somebody that needs help, and so just make a phone call here and let Barb know, and we'll get it out there and get it taken care of. So. But anyway, we want to wish you a happy Valentine's Day, and there's plenty of refreshments there. Take some home to your bride or husband if you're here, and we appreciate you folks and your support, and we're adjourned. We'll see you next month.
No contact you, and he'll contact me.
There you go.
You might not get any more food.
Yeah, you're in trouble,
Really? He was over there. Was it yesterday? I know one of the days he was over there. He got it. Oh, yeah.